welcome to my custom-made JoJo Iceberg. These entries are either ones I found interesting or were just taken from other icebergs and added here. If you don't know what an iceberg is, it's a compilation of theories, questions, and ideas all relating to one subject. As we go further down, the concepts should become less known. If you don't know what JoJo is, what are you doing here? For each topic, I will say which part it has spoilers for, so look out for that and make sure you're listening. Without further ado, let's get into the iceberg. Araki Forgot. Araki Forgot is a very common term within the JoJo community. It refers to Araki retconning or forgetting concepts within the series. Many people who claim that Araki has forgetfulness cite interviews where he says he has some memory problems. Many people have also heard this term due to the YouTuber HamonBeat, who has a series debunking the many Araki Forgots. A lot of the Araki Forgots can be chalked up to fans either misreading or not understanding the series. Some of the topics on the iceberg will be these forgotten plot lines. Who shot Johnny? Part 7 spoilers. In the D4C arc of Steel Ball Run, Johnny Joestar is suddenly shot in the face by an unknown figure. Upon Gyro asking who shot him, the witnesses are all giving very contradictory answers. Half of them think it's Diego, half of them think it's Weka Pipo, and one person thinks it's Valentine. We proceed to see this arc from different perspectives. We see Weka Pipo be attacked by a man behind a flag, seemingly Valentine, as he shoots into the flag before appearing in front of an already shot Johnny, making him think that he shot him. One important thing to understand is that this is likely an alternate Weka Pipo, not the original. We then see Diego, who attempts to shoot Weka Pipo, but is suddenly in front of an already shot Johnny, with an unaware Weka Pipo watching him. We then finally get the reveal that Johnny was actually shot by Valentine, who effectively used D4C to teleport. This arc is extremely confusing and convoluted, and frankly, I may have gotten it wrong. If you think you fully understand this arc, leave it in the comments and I'll add it to the already pinned comment. Part 6 hate. Part 6 is the most hated part of JoJo besides Part 1. A lot of people cite different reasons for disliking Stone Ocean, and some are far more valid than others. I've heard some people say they don't like the subpar fights like Yo-Yo Ma and Dragon's Dream. Some people say that the ending is bad. Some people say that Giorno should have returned. Some people hate women, and more. Many criticisms of Part 6 come from people just not paying attention though. Like, some people straight up make stuff up about it and then get mad about what they made up. Flashback Man. Flashback Man is a character that appears in a total of 2 panels and is never seen again in JoJolion. The person has long blonde hair and appears to be someone important to Josuke. This is an extremely rare case of a memory suddenly coming back to Josuke, however, it's unknown who this is as, like I said, it's never brought up again. The most likely answer is that it's an early design for a character. My money's on Damo due to the blonde hair, however, this could really be any character. I've heard some say Kira or Ojiro, but these characters appear soon after and look completely different. I've also heard some say Yotsuyu or even Norisuke. Bling Baby. Bling Baby is the name given to another very minor character from JoJolion. The baby is discussed when Johnny's backstory is given. The baby appeared on the shores of Morio after Johnny's death with nothing but a hat, socks, and a bunch of gems. Many didn't understand what this meant, but in my opinion, all it is a miracle caused by Johnny. Johnny achieved sainthood by accomplishing miracles and sacrificing himself. This baby appearing is one of those said miracles. Stardust Crusaders was meant to be the end. Part 3 was originally the end of JoJo. Araki had no plan to continue the series beyond Stardust Crusaders as he believed the battle against Dio was over. However, due to its popularity and Araki's ideas for new stands and characters, Part 4 was created, and eventually Araki became really attached to his newer characters, with Josuke even becoming his favorite. Manga scenes not animated. There are many manga scenes that were not animated. Some of the more popular ones include Jonathan eating chocolate, Josuke talking to Yukiko, Bruno eating pizza, Trey Jolene, Anasui getting mad at Mickey Mouse, and far more. Jotaro likes Koichi because he reminds him of Kakyoin. Part 3 spoilers. Despite how overused of a joke it is, Jotaro does like Koichi a lot, and we see this multiple times throughout Part 4. He seems to find him very reliable and is even somewhat protective of him. This is likely because Koichi reminds Jotaro of Kakyoin. His uniform combined with the kind spirit of Koichi is easy to relate to Kakyoin, and especially considering that Koichi was almost killed in a similar fashion, this theory isn't too far-fetched. First appearances. Many characters have very odd first appearances in the manga. This is often due to their designs not being fully perfected yet and Araki continuing to experiment. Some of my favorite examples of this are Koichi, Josuke, Iggy, Jobin, Kakyoin, and Johnny. Purple Haze feedback canonicity. Purple Haze feedback is in an interesting spot in terms of canonicity. The novel doesn't go against anything said in the Golden Wind manga, and so when it came out, a lot of people thought that it was canon. However, the anime contradicts almost all of the book. Some examples are Abakio and Naranja's introduction to the gang and Fugo's backstory. These are very drastically different. However, some say that the anime is canon, and some say that the novel is canon. It's unknown because Araki had something to do with both, so it's mostly up to personal preference. This is also your reminder to read Purple Haze feedback. Part 7 wasn't originally meant to be JoJo. This theory isn't true, but has been spread around a lot. Up until midway through Part 7, there was actually no association with Araki's previous work in the marketing. It was just called Steel Ball Run. This leads many to believe that Part 7 wasn't meant to be a JoJo part, especially considering the lack of stands at the beginning. But Araki has said that it was always written to be the 7th part. He just got rid of the JoJo moniker early on because he thought it would be more opening to new fans. It could have also been due to Stone Ocean's decreased popularity compared to other parts. Anasui's gender. Anasui's gender is a hotly debated topic, but it was more or less solved with the creation of the Stone Ocean anime. At the beginning of the manga, Anasui is a woman. However, later he becomes more androgynous and eventually, undoubtedly, a man. This led many to question the decision made by Araki, but in the anime, he was always drawn as a man, so many just chalked it up to Araki wanting a different character but changing his mind. However, the creator designer for the anime revealed that Araki said Anasui could be drawn in any of these 3 forms for the anime, and that the whole point of Anasui was that he goes beyond general conventions of gender. Araki likely re-explored this idea with Dragona in Part 9. Jotaro was nerfed. Part 6 spoilers. Another common criticism of Stone Ocean is Jotaro being nerfed, as to say that he is less powerful than he was before. There are 3 main examples people point to when saying this. First, when the discs get taken. The situation can be explained by him simply panicking and not fully understanding what was happening. He was trying to save Jolene but ended up getting shot himself. The second situation is this punch. Jotaro punches Pucci directly in the head, and in Part 3, he is shown to be able to crush Dio's skull doing the same thing. You must remember here, however, that not only is Jotaro in his 40s now, but he just came out of a coma. He isn't at full strength here, and we also don't really know how much damage he did. He very well may have severely injured Pucci, but he could have lessened the blow with Sea Moon. Finally, the scene of his death. But here there really shouldn't be an argument. He was panicked, and especially under the effects of Made in Heaven, he ran out of time. Overall, I don't think Jotaro was nerfed, and I have never understood this theory. King Crimson is inconsistent. Part 5 spoilers. King Crimson is a very commonly criticized stand for being inconsistent. I will now explain King Crimson to the best of my understanding. King Crimson allows its user Diavolo to skip 10 seconds in time. In this time, everyone is bound to perform the actions that they were fated to do, except Diavolo, who can move around freely to an advantageous position. Anything bound to Diavolo, like his blood, can also be manipulated. Diavolo himself cannot interact with objects or people. Now, here you may say that we see him take Trish and kill Narancia, which are events where he seemingly interacts with things in skip time. I counter you by saying that objects Diavolo himself would have done also occur. For example, Narancia would have been killed regardless of the skip. He was far away from the group and they wouldn't have seen it. The reason Diavolo skipped time is it allowed them to not see how he did it or who he was bound to. I hope this explanation makes sense. Golden Wind versus Vento Aureo. JoJo Part 5 has 2 titles people often call it, Golden Wind and, pardon my pronunciation, Vento Aureo. The latter is the Italian translation of Golden Wind. However, the official title of the manga and anime is Golden Wind. So, which do you call it? I don't know, man, who cares? Change names. Many names were changed throughout JoJo. Some were changed before release, some midway through, and some after. Some examples are as follows. Kakyoin's first name was meant to be Tenmei, before Araki's editor misread the kanji for the name as Noriaki, and Araki just kept it that way. Kei Nijimura's stand was originally called Going Under, but was changed to Born This Way. Made in Heaven was originally called Stairway to Heaven in the magazine release, but was changed in the volumes. Viviana Westwood's ability was changed to Planet Waves from Earth, Wind, and Fire, as that name already belonged to the ability of Miki Taka. There are more examples, but these were just some of the ones that were interesting to me. Thoth's prediction came true. Part 6 spoilers. In Part 3, Boingo's stand Thoth would make predictions that are destined to come true. One of these predictions was that Jotaro would be killed by his face sort of splitting open, and Araki never forgets. Jodio is Diego's descendant. Part 7 spoilers. Jodio is the latest JoJo, and due to his name and mysterious lack of a father, many people theorize that he may be the son of Diego Brando. I think this is entirely possible, as it could also be a callback to Giorno. The only issue with this is that both Scary Monsters Diego and Alt Diego were seemingly killed before they could have any children. I could still see this being possible, however. Rohan can cross dimensions. As of writing this, the latest chapter of the JoJo lands that is out is the 5th, and due to the reveal of Rohan, many people are suggesting that due to his lack of name or appearance change, Rohan can cross dimensions. Whether this theory is true or not, I guess we'll see. Whole Horse is an honorary Crusader. Araki had originally planned to add the fan favorite character Whole Horse to the group in Part 3. This change was seemingly very close to happening, with one piece of art of the Crusaders also containing Whole Horse. The reason Whole Horse wasn't added was for 2 main reasons. 1, his stand was far too powerful and had almost no limitations, and 2, he was very similar to Polnareff and didn't provide an interesting addition. While Whole Horse could have been interesting, personally I'm glad he didn't get added. Josuke's original stand. In part 8, Josuke was originally meant to have a stand very different from soft and wet. The stand would allow him to attach screws or bolts to certain parts of an object or person. These screws could be removed and cause that object to fall off. Upon hearing this, you may realize how similar it is to Joshu's stand, Nut King Call. This is because Araki ended up favoring the bubble ability over the screws, but still gave it to another character in the form of Joshu. Polnareff should be dead. Part 5 spoilers. I believe this is referring to how Polnareff should be dead given what we know about Chariot Requiem's abilities. First, we see him die, but right before his spirit is gone, Chariot causes him to switch bodies with Coco Jumbo. From here, he continued to live in the turtle. However, even after Chariot Requiem is killed and everyone goes back to their bodies, Polnareff remains in the turtle. The reason for this is never explained as far as I know, and so it leads many to say that Polnareff should be dead as he should have returned back to his body. Straizo Fan Letter, Part 2 spoilers. This refers to a fan letter written to Araki regarding the death of the character Straizo. The writer was clearly very upset about the death, saying, and I quote, Stray-sama died, and I was going to make a Stray-sama fan book and Stray-sama fan comic. It's awful. It hasn't even been 2 weeks since I sent that. Now is the era of Straizo postcard. Why? Why? That's the end? That can't be true. I can't believe it. That he could be killed by JoJo like that? It was way too different from Dio. He'll come back to life, won't he? Right? Right? It's gonna make me cry. I love that incredibly dull guy, even if he was a country hick. Stray-sama, you can't have died. Sensei, you hippo! Giorno was meant to be a woman. While writing Part 5, Araki wanted Giorno to be a woman. His editors, as well as Shonen Jump, thought this was a bad idea, however. Specifically, they talked about how many shonen fans were men, so a male protagonist would be better. Araki eventually obliged, but would obviously later demand a female protagonist with Stone Ocean. Some remnants of Giorno being a woman are still left, however. His Japanese name, Haruno Shiobana, is feminine, and Gold Experience's ability to give life is likely left over of him being a woman. Cioccolata was meant to be Fugo. Part 5 spoilers. This theory sort of has two parts to it. First of all, if you watch Part 5, you definitely remember Fugo leaving the group halfway through, as he didn't want to go against the boss. This led to many people wondering where Fugo went, or why he never returned. Well, Araki has actually spoken at length about Fugo and his plans that didn't come to fruition. The plan was that he would come back as a sort of spy, and would be killed by a member of the gang. Araki ended up not going through with this, however, as he thought it was too depressing and he couldn't bear to write it. Due to this, many people say that the fight against Green Day and Oasis was originally meant to be against Purple Haze and Oasis. The main reasoning for this is that both Cioccolata and Fugo have relatively similar stands, and Cioccolata ends up being killed directly by Giorno. This theory has no concrete evidence, but it certainly is interesting to think about. Spin was unknowingly used in Part 2. This is a theory that Spin was being used in Part 2 without the characters being necessarily aware of it. As we see in Part 7, Spin can create a stand or make an already existing stand stronger. The same applies to Hamon, as we see Hermit Purple work with Hamon. This means that it wouldn't be too far-fetched to say that Spin can enhance Hamon and vice versa. For example, the way Joseph spins his clackers and the way that they come back to him is very similar to Gyro's steel balls. Caesar's bubbles are also seemingly spinning, making them very strong. If you want to extend it, Wamu's Divine Sandstorm could also involve him spinning his arms to the golden ratio. All of these examples are very strong abilities that involve spinning in a certain way, so this may have been the characters unknowingly using such an ability. Soundman was brought in by D4C, Part 7 spoilers. Soundman is a character from Part 7 who fights Johnny and Gyro around halfway through the part. Many note how he seems different from how he originally did, with the biggest difference being his name. Throughout the story, Soundman is called Sandman, even by his sister, and so some theorize that Soundman was brought in by D4C. Another piece of evidence for this is that it seemed that originally Soundman's stand would be the ability to control sand, but this is very different from his true stand, In a Silent Way's ability. Weather is albino, Part 6 spoilers. Weather Report being albino is a long time JoJo theory that I personally think is basically confirmed. It was always a question of how Weather was so light-skinned when he was directly related to Poochie, who is much darker. Well, considering his white hair and blue eyes, I don't find it to be unlikely that Weather is albino. And for everyone saying that Weather's parents are both white, we see Poochie here with his dad, who is very clearly not. Part 7 may not be animated. With Part 6 coming to an end, many were wondering about Part 7's animation, because Steel Ball Run fans are never satisfied. In all seriousness, there is a chance Part 7 may not be animated. First off, one of the producers stated that the JoJo anime was only planned up to Part 6. This makes sense when you consider that we don't see Johnny in the Part 1 opening. Also, Steel Ball Run is already at a disadvantage due to the amount of horses in it. Many of the shots in the manga would be extremely hard to animate, as horses are extremely hard to animate, especially with this many. With all that said, I do legitimately think Part 7 will eventually be done, but it will probably be a few years from now to even hear about it. 36 Cars on Mars. 36 Cars on Mars is a music video based on something that happens in the George Joestar novel, so spoilers for that. Basically, when the universe resets due to Made in Heaven, Kars is unaffected as he is immortal, and so when the time comes, another Kars is sent to Mars due to Joseph. Kars decides to hatch a plan to wait for this to happen 34 more times, which takes 1 quadrillion years. This plan ended up inspiring a guy to make a song called 36 Cars on Mars. The song basically just makes fun of the novel and how stupid this idea is. Araki is in love with Rohan. An ongoing joke among JoJo fans is that Rohan is Araki's self-insert, but what is truly hidden underneath the surface is the theory that Araki is in love with Rohan. I mean, think about it. He gets his own spin-off, he appears in part 9, was the choice for the Gucci and Louvre collabs, and of course, we can't forget this piece of art. Come on, Araki, you're not fooling anyone. Jesus' stand. Jesus being in JoJo is something that everyone kind of laughs about, but did you know he actually had a stand? You may not remember, but when Lucy was turning into the corpse, she gained a stand ability, that being Ticket to Ride. This ability effectively made Lucy invincible. There were several cases of divine intervention that prevented her from being hurt, and so many claim that this is the stand of Jesus. Anasui is Trish's sibling, part 5 spoilers. This is a theory that Anasui is the sibling of Trish Una from part 5. The evidence for this is as follows. Anasui, Trish, and Diavolo all have naturally pink hair. Diavolo and Anasui dress the same. Anasui's gaining of a stand is never explained, so it may have been Diavolo. Narciso is an Italian name, and Anasui would have been around 13 or 14 during the events of Golden Wind, making him only around 1 to 2 years younger than Trish. This is a pretty cool theory that has a surprising amount of evidence. Araki is a vampire/Hamon user. It is no secret that Araki has aged incredibly, and so this has led many to say that Araki is either a Hamon user or a vampire, as those two possibilities would keep him looking young. Perhaps JoJo is simply an autobiography by Araki about how to live forever. Part 6's original ending. Part 6 spoilers. Part 6's ending is one of the best arcs in JoJo, but originally it was intended to be quite different. Apparently, pretty late into the manga, Araki drastically changed the ending, and while we will likely never know what the original ending was, many have posed theories. The most likely to me is that the ending was a more traditional JoJo ending, with Pucci attaining heaven, but Jotaro and the gang defeating him. Some other ideas people have proposed is Pucci actually winning, although I find this completely impossible. Some also say that perhaps Made in Heaven was originally something different, but was changed to be unstoppable, or near unstoppable. But we will likely never know what this original ending was. Steven was made more sympathetic. Part 7 spoilers. Steven Steele is a likely untalked about character from Part 7. One thing many discuss about him, however, is that he may have been made more sympathetic. We see at the beginning that Steven is slightly annoying and is obviously indicated to be a weirdo by his 14-year-old wife. Towards the end, however, we see that Steven believed in Johnny and Gyro, with it being revealed that he only married Lucy to help her and he never laid a finger on her. This has led some to say that Steven was originally a villain working with Valentine, but was changed in the end to help Johnny and Gyro. I personally find this unlikely though, but I do agree that the backstory was kind of out of nowhere. Jobin is Walter White, Part 8 spoilers. This is a theory that Jobin Higashikata is based off of Walter White. Especially with the multiple Breaking Bad references in Part 9, many people think that this is true. The evidence for this is that both enter the drug business behind their family's back to not only cure a previously incurable disease, but to also make money to allow their families to prosper. Both Jobin and Walt become more and more questionable as the series goes on. Both have an emotional climax by leading to the death of a family member, even though Norisuke actually survived, and both die in a similar way, bleeding out. While I can see why people say this, and I agree that there may have been some inspiration, it's not really a one-to-one thing. Bruno is the Zeppeli. This is actually a pretty popular theory, but there really isn't any evidence other than the fact that Bruno is Italian, just like the other Zeppelis. Neither his father nor mother seem to be related, and this is more like a headcanon thing as far as I can tell. It's still a cool theory though. Kira killed Shizuka's mother. Another theory is that Kira killed Shizuka's mother. If you don't remember Shizuka, she's the invisible baby from Part 4. There isn't much more to this theory other than that. It makes complete sense given that we are never shown the woman who Kira has the hand of, and Shizuka is found all alone, and nobody even attempts to look for her. This is an interesting and potentially even true theory. Usagi will be the main villain. Now we're getting into the good stuff. This is a theory that Usagi Aloha Oe will be the main villain of Part 9. We've seen Rohan tell Jodio not to trust those in his gang, and this would be a good explanation for that. As of now, Usagi doesn't seem to have any motives or even a way that he could convince Meryl to let him join. Perhaps Meryl is the true villain and is simply using Usagi. Either way, it's interesting to speculate that we have already met met the villain of Part 9. The Truth of Valentine's Deal, Part 7 spoilers. Valentine's Deal refers to the Break My Heart, Break Your Heart arc, in which we see Valentine present Johnny with a deal. In exchange for Johnny giving up the corpse, Valentine will travel to another dimension with D4C and bring back Gyro. He will then let them go free and they will never interact again. Johnny is initially skeptical of the deal, but he eventually says he will accept it under the condition that he can confirm Valentine is unarmed, which he isn't. Valentine and Johnny then get into a gunfight before Johnny wins. This theory states that we will never know what Valentine actually would have done. There are a lot of variables here that Valentine could have been lying about. When we see alternate dimensions, there is never another Gyro, which makes me think that Gyro may be like Valentine's father, where he is dead in every dimension. We also don't know if what he said about the alternate Gyro walking the same path would be true. For all we know, all of this deal or none of it was true. Fate is still vital to the new universe. Part 8 spoilers. Our final entry says that Fate is still vital to the newer parts of JoJo. After Part 6, Fate kinda took a back seat. It was the main theme of Parts 5, 6, and arguably had been the theme of the whole series. In Part 7, that was seemingly abandoned for things like the golden ratio. I would argue that Fate is still important, however. There are several times Fate plays an important role in the story. For example, Johnny meeting Gyro is what allowed him to overcome the unbeatable stand of D4C. Another example of this is that Kira and Josefumi not only met later in life, not only both had bubble stands, but also are part of an irrepeatable miracle to create Josuke. While Fate may be less important, I still believe that it definitely has a part to play in the new universe. Alright, and that was the JoJo Iceberg. Thank you for watching, and if you liked the video, why not like the video? Alright, I'll see you next time.